I guess the first thing that I'd like to get into is this the protest that we're now seeing online, the that started with the construction workers. Is this the first like major protest that we're seeing in Australia? And if so, why do you think it took so long? And what was the tipping point of people that sort of made them jump to doing this essentially?
Well, obviously, this is not the first, protests. In fact, I think it's definitely the biggest one so far. So as far as the word major goes, I suppose this does qualify as the biggest, the recent last couple of weeks. But these protests started very early. They started pretty much in around August last year, or even in July last year, I think. That's when the first police brutalities started, where a policeman, for example, you might have seen the image. It's now pretty outdated, but still there. A woman who's walking on the road and without a mask. She actually had a mask exemption. Turned out later, but she was obviously had a bit unclear about what's happening, and so the police person basically seemed to have choked her on the neck.
Oh.
And there's another person, Zoe, who sort of wanted. So their protest was small, sporadic protests all over Victoria, and I'm sure across Australia, because of the lockdowns, so those were initial protests were not about the vaccine. Obviously, they were merely about the fact that this is unwarranted. And in fact, the mask became, I think, the first tipping point. The lockdowns per se did not lead to many protests because they started towards the end of March. April, May, June, people seemed to sort of, okay, let's live with this somehow. There weren't many protests, but from, I think, July onwards, when they imposed the mandatory masks outdoor policy, and that's the police, when they started enforcing, as I said, this woman wasn't wearing a mask and they choked her and so on. And in fact, they not only did that, they also, one police person came and hit another person, was walking, another somewhat not very, in good condition person. They hit the person with a moving car. So these incidents of police brutality led people to come out on the streets. Now, these things were also beginning to happen all over the world. These freedom protests, they were actually not just in Australia, they were part of a global movement, which had by the time started in Europe, for instance, and many other places against the lockdowns. So these people were feeding off each other. They were in touch with each other. There were young people. Harrison, for example, is one who's recently been arrested. He was one of the people who had been initially, organizing these Telegram groups and other things. In fact, I wasn't on Telegram, but he had been organizing on Facebook and so on. Initially, Facebook was quite okay. They were allowing these kind of things. And then, of course, that got banned. So the protest really started as a response to the policies. So they were relatively small initially. You're right about that. But then the police brutality started increasing. So in February 2020, I had attended one of these on that, I think 20th of February 2021. What am I saying? 2021 this year. I had attended a protest where there were around, at least I would argue, 3,000 to 4,000 people. This was Melbourne. This was not there was no lockdown at that stage. But what had happened by the time, and the organizers said clearly that they would only let me speak if I was to say something against the vaccines and so on. So the vaccines had already come into play, and a lot of young people were very angry at the vaccines. So I oppose mandatory vaccines, and I went and said all those things. But the media started projecting these protests as anti-vaxxers. Now the vaccine has actually become the tipping point for a wider range of people joining in. So there were 3,000 people, as I said, in February. And that was there was no lockdown at that stage. It was just some kind of, requirement that you should socially distance when you're outside and you should wear masks and whatnot.
Yeah.
At that stage, I think the masks had been lifted for a short period of time. For some reason, there was no mask. I don't remember exactly, but I don't remember myself wearing a mask for that protest. And such things started happening. But after the policies of vaccinating people as part of their occupation, That's become, I think, the biggest issue, where the construction workers, as you saw, they're the ones who are saying, hey, the union, they went to the CFMEU, which is the union of the construction and manufacturing industry, whatever it's called. And out there, they had this big argument with their own union boss saying, why aren't you protecting us from these mandatory vaccines? So that's when things really turned pear-shaped for everybody. A fair bit of violence took place that day. That then led, so it was basically the truckies. Before that, I think at the end of August was the truckies, the truck drivers, who were being forced to do PCR tests and other such things while crossing borders and this and that, and they were obviously getting significant issues with their occupations. So I think the initial protests were all about the young people who are just feeling frustrated about things and very unhappy and so on, and then joining a global movement. But then things started, it's like the pincers have been closing around the people, so the tyranny has been getting closer and closer home. You're losing your jobs, the nurses, the teachers, the people who work in the mines. So I've got so many groups, I'm a member of so many groups in Telegram where they've invited me to join and listen, and I don't get much time. But there are the people who have been oppressed by the big mining companies, which are global, many of them owned in UK, but operated here. And these companies have done the same thing. They said that if you want to work in this in your job, you got to vaccinate yourself. And the people are saying that you haven't really asked us for our opinion on that, whether we want to do it. And they're basically asking for informed consent. They're saying we might vaccinate ourselves, but you can't be doing this kind of coercion. And of course, many people, I think, are talking about resigning if they are forced to do it. So this stuff is starting to hit home, and that's when when your food is going to be not available on the table, it's being removed from the table because of this. Then obviously you're pushing people to the wall, and that's actually the pressure is mounting even as we speak with the vaccine passports coming into place. Now you're going to have a situation where people who don't take the vaccines in Australia are soon going to not be able to participate in simple things like going to a restaurant. It's already happened in many countries in Europe, and some countries have lifted all these mandates. But the fact is, Australia is the pincers of the big state, the big brother state, are getting closer and closer. And in that, the people who are getting squished under this grip of the state, they are now starting to really come out and protest. However, as they protest, the state is getting even stronger and harsher. And what we're seeing now is the kind of brutality that is probably getting very close to what we see with communist China and their tyranny within their own country, or in Hong Kong, for instance. So and those images are going all over the world. They are creating a bit of waves. Governor DeSantis of Florida really said that, this looks like a communist, this would be part of a communist country, what's going on. And he condemned this yesterday, or day before yesterday. There were some press people who asked Scott Morrison, who had recently been to the USA, to sign a nuclear sub deal with the UK, Australia, and USA. And and Morrison really said to these guys, hey, he tried to shrug this whole thing off and said, we are actually different societies. We're not the same. I mean, what is he talking about? I called him a mealy-mouthed person. He's basically saying that the Australians are not part of the Western civilization. We don't really care for freedom in Australia. It's only you guys who, care about freedom and so on. You ask such questions, because actually the media in Australia never asks a single question about these things. The most remarkable thing about this thing is that it is the media in Australia that wants more of these things. And I think I shared this little chart, which is why does the media want it? Because the people want it. And the people are so afraid and hysterical and in panic mode with this COVID thing, that they are willing to have the complete elimination of freedom just to keep themselves safe. So the media responds to the people. It's actually a vicious cycle. The media caused the panic among the people by exaggerating everything. The people got into panic mode. The media loves to create panic because they get eyeballs. Once the people got into panic mode, the media would not publish things. For example, from me, the Australian didn't publish some very straightforward thing that I had said, but I had to publish elsewhere because they didn't want to stop the hysteria. The golden goose or whatever, that's just giving them as much money as they want with the advertising and eyeballs and everything. So why would they want to stop it? So it's become a terrible vicious cycle in Australia, where the people want more and more tyranny. And I've actually had personal experience of talking to so many people who want Australia's borders to be closed, not just for a short time. The word they use, permanently. They want Australia's borders to be closed permanently. There are so many people there. You'll be astonished, because they say that we are far away from everybody. We don't need anybody. We just have some trade and ships and other things, and we don't need people coming in and out. We just stay separately.
That's quite scary. The permanently thing, and that
it is
permanently. That's weird. So I've been like putting up some of the videos and stuff, just because I think it's important for people to realize here that we aren't talking about some. I don't want to exaggerate here. Like, I don't want this to be the case. I don't want to be looking at the onset of some sort of tyranny in the modern world. I don't want to see that, especially in like a developed nation. That's not what I want to see at all. And it's really concerning to me that that's where we're kind of at with some of this stuff. So I've been pulling up some of the videos, but I just wanted to go through some more of them just sort of briefly, because I think it's important that we look at like what we're seeing. So I showed this one already. I know you can't quite see them, but so this is a woman walking on the beach with no mask, and there's like 10 police officers with her, but this is repeated in all of the other examples that I've seen. There's one here that I'm going to pull it up here and go forward to where, they start to arrest him. And there's like one man outside, and they've got like 6 police officers all like taking him in. Then there's a few examples of just anytime someone is arrested or taken down, it's in huge numbers. And it's really scary that this is just sort of accepted. One of the ones that I wanted to show was this. There's a guy who's like getting tackled into his car door by like 3 or 4 police, and the one guy comes in, like, slams him in the face, and then like later on in the video, if you like fast forward a little bit through, then the police officers who are still being filmed, like just they go up and then here it is, they just kick him in the face. They literally just come in and kick the guy in the face, and then they turn around like mad at the people filming, as if, what are you doing? Like, how dare you film this? So I'm trying to give people an idea that this isn't all just like people being crazy. There's another video here from inside a shopping mall, where a guy gets like just taken from behind and thrown to the ground, like face first. It's really disturbing for me to see this in what's meant to be like a Western, or not even Western. I don't like that word because it's just not very useful. Like West from where? But like
it's actually a correct. It's a correct term to use for what is a different kind of a civilization with different assumptions. So that's okay.
Yeah. But basically, I can't believe that we're seeing this happening. So what has the reaction been in Australia to this? Like, what have been the reaction to the protests and to if you look at the police brutality? Like, has there been any like opinions changed or hardened in this respect?
No. It's actually quite interesting that if you look at the Twitter feeds or Facebook where somebody posts these kind of things, you look at the comments from the average person. They say, why were these people out there? They should have followed the rules. They're basically blaming the people. The vast majority of Australians are very much against these guys. They think the police are absolutely on the right side. The popularity of Dan Andrews, who's the guy who's running the state of Victoria, is sky high, absolutely sky high. He is, Chairman Dan or whatever you call him, but he's actually very popular. The media is obviously very supportive. There's 1 or 2 sporadic voices among the institutions, like the other day, of Fair Work Commissioner, kind of an organization that looks after the industrial relations and wage agreements in Australia. One of the commissioners, they're actually the this is about a mandatory vaccine thing, and one of them said, why are we doing this kind of things? But the human rights commissioners, very rarely they call out this thing. Nobody really seems to bother. The other day, these protesters went to the shrine. The shrine is a place where they commemorate the people, the Anzacs and others who fought in the World War I and II and so on. And that's a very kind of a sacred place for everybody in Australia. And the protesters were driven to that place because they were not allowed to hang around in the city. So they were driven by the police to that place. So when they go there, the police beat them up further. And then the people are complaining, including the RSL, which is the Returned Soldiers League, complaining, why are these guys coming and desecrating this shrine? So what we've seen is the vast majority of the institutions and the media and the people are very much against the protesters. They're very much, the commentary is very much against them. And so has anyone's mind changed from this? I really don't think so. I think most people have simply hardened their position, and it's basically become them versus us. So there are two kinds of people, and that's actually getting further hardened with the vaccine passport thing that we are seeing develop as we speak. So yeah, it's a situation which is very sort of reminds us of the things that happen in obviously in the Germany is the recent example we can think about in the World War I, where the groups were segregated. The society started getting segregated in terms of certain groups, and then it just progressed from one to the other next step. And I don't know about how far this goes, but I can definitely say that the split has become quite hard. And at the moment, there are just these two groups of people head on facing each other, but the majority, the vast majority, is the one that wants more lockdowns, wants more mandates, is very keen for the vaccines, of course, but also keen for the vaccine passport. So this is a pretty dangerous situation for the people who are living in Australia at the moment, who think of a thing known at one time called freedom, just the basic freedom to breathe, because you cannot breathe in Australia anymore. You've got to wear a mask if you go outside. You cannot walk because you can only go for up to 5 kilometers from your home. And there are curfews on top of that. And on top of that, very soon you will not be able to shop and so on. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment for us in the comments below. Let me know what you thought and if you'd like to see more of this from the show. Thank you, and we'll see you again next time.